Hi, my name is Deborah. This is Booking with Deborah. Today's video is something a little bit different. It's a little bit of a holiday vlog. I am currently on holiday in the beautiful county of Norfolk in the UK in England, very near the coast. In fact, behind me, this is where we're staying, but just behind me there is a sand dune just here, and just over the sand dune is straight onto the beautiful beach and the coastline of Norfolk. I'm hoping it's not too bright for filming, I've no idea, we'll find out when I edit this video. I also thought I would share with you what I am planning to read during my week off. I'm trying to do some sort of themed reading around the location in which we are staying. So I did a little bit of research about books that are based in Norfolk that I thought I might be interested in. And the first book that I found, which has actually been a book that's been on my library wish list for a little while, is this one, and that is The Leviathan by Rosie. Sorry if it's a bit glary because it is a library borrow. This book is historical fiction and it starts out in Norfolk in 1643 during the Civil War era. This book has been compared to The Witchfinder's Sister, which is a book by Beth Underdown, which I did read some time ago before I started doing booktube, which I thought was okay. But I think what that book did, that this book also does, is draw in the history of witch finding movement in the UK that was around during the time that this book is set. And the book is also compared to The Familiars, which is a book by Stacey Halls, which I really enjoyed. So this book is based in the area similar to where I'm currently staying. So we're about less than an hour from Norwich on the coast, and this book makes reference to an area called Walsham, and we're not actually far from a place called North Walsham, so I'm not sure if it's the same place or not. I've struggled to find a place called Walsham on the map, so I don't know if it's been renamed as North Walsham in more recent times. But this book does make reference to the characters going to Norwich quite a bit, so it's a very similar area to where I'm based. And as the title suggests, this book has also got a mythical element to it. The Leviathan, my understanding is that it's actually I think it's like a mythical creature that might be mentioned in the Bible. I'm not 100% sure, but obviously I'll find out more as the book goes on. So this is probably going to be my main holiday read. We're away on holiday for a week. But I've also found an audiobook which I got on Audible when they do their kind of £3 offers, which is another book obviously based in the Norfolk landscape, and that is more of a memoir. And that book is On the Marsh, A Year Surrounded by Wildness and Wet by Simon Barnes. And this book is all about the author's experience of purchasing an area of Norfolk marshland and how they tried to set that land aside for nature to thrive, and it's all about their experiences of the nature and the wildlife that comes to the marshland over a number of years. And I think what this book does is look at all the different wildlife that is commonly found in the Norfolk marsh landscape, and the author's experience with their family of how they benefited by being surrounded with that nature, and also how they worked with the Wildlife Trust to maintain and look after the landscape in the best interests of nature and the wildlife in the area. So that sounds like it'd be quite an interesting listen for while we're here, because as the sea, I said the coast is just here behind me, but on the other side of where we're staying, single track roads and a lot of the Norfolk marshland, so we're sort of in between those two really interesting diverse landscapes, which is very different from the landscape in which we live in North Yorkshire, so it's nice to come somewhere different. So those are the reads that I am planning for while I am a week off. I will also be sharing in this video some scenes and some little videos of the surrounding area, because it really is a beautiful area, and you never know, if I do a little bit of book shopping, I might share a little bit of a mini book haul while we're here as well. had a couple of days of sort of cloudy weather while we've been here. We have been really lucky most of the time and the weather's been absolutely beautiful. Sunshine, proper kind of sitting out in the sun weather, but we did have a couple of days where it was very, very cloudy with a bit of drizzle, so we went out and about to explore some of the local area. We have been on holiday to the Norfolk coast before, so the places that we went to visit we have been to before, but we just thought it's nice to have a little mooch about when it's not such a nice day. One of the places we went to was the seaside town of Sheringham. If you've been following my channel for a while, you will know I love perusing second-hand books in charity shops, so I just thought I'd share with you while we're here just a few of the little things that I treated to myself too. First two things that I've purchased from the charity shops are not bookish things, they're actually jigsaws. I do love doing a jigsaw sometimes. We've actually got quite a few jigsaws at home, but the jigsaws we've got are all 1,000 piece jigsaws, and I've got to be honest, sometimes they feel like really hard work, especially if they're quite complicated. So I've been on the lookout for some kind of reasonably priced 500 piece jigsaws for a little while, and I managed to find two in the charity shops. The first one I've got is this one. Thought would be quite nice to do in spring if it's a not so good weather day, listening to an audiobook. I like to listen to audiobooks while I'm doing jigsaw, so there's that one. And then the other one I've got, so that's like an autumn jigsaw, and that was also 500 piece and also sealed, so I thought bit of a bargain, couldn't resist. And then I also picked up some books from some of the charity shops while I was there. The first book that I purchased is one that I've actually had on my library wish for a little while, and that is Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Rivka Brunt. My understanding just from looking at the blurb on this book is it's about a 14-year-old girl called June whose uncle passes away, and when he passes away she befriends at his funeral a friend of her uncle's, or who she thinks is a friend of her uncle's. But I think it turns out that the friend is actually the uncle's partner that she didn't know anything about. And I think this book explores themes around the 1980s AIDS crisis in New York. The next book that I picked up is a bit of a historical fiction, I think with multiple timelines, called The Sewing Machine by Natalie Fergie. And it's all about the history of the sewing machine. It starts out in 1911. And it's based in Edinburgh, which I think is the first timeline. And then the second timeline, I think, is when the grandson discovers documents and patchwork relating to things that happened in the past. And the reason that I picked this book up is I'm quite interested to read more books based in Edinburgh, because that is actually the city that I was born in, but I haven't really read a lot of books in that setting. And I'm also planning to do some themed reading at some point in the future. This fiction book would fit quite well with the sort of themed idea that I've got for future videos. And then the final book that I purchased from local charity shops is a non-fiction book, and that is called The Interior Silence by Sarah Sands, and it's 10 lessons from the monastic life. I am not religious, I don't have a particular faith or anything, but I'm sometimes interested to find out what different faiths and religions have in common, and the themes that are there, and what we can take from that to kind of enhance our human lived experience and our sense of wellness and our spiritual well-being. I'm very interested in spiritual well-being, although not as part of a kind of recognised faith, so I thought this sounded like quite an interesting read, and it was only £1.50 from the charity shop. The author goes to different places across the world into different kind of monastic settings to find out what we can glean from people who've lived in those settings. It explores Japan, Catalonia, the Egyptian desert, Bhutan. It actually looks at Marham Abbey, which is in Norfolk, which is obviously the area where I'm currently staying, so that also really interested me. It looks at Lindisfarne, which is in the UK, Salzburg and Greece. So I also thought this might be quite interesting for my Read Around the World challenge as well, because it looks at a very different aspect of life within those different countries. Those are the books and the jigsaws that I treated to myself to while away on this holiday trip. As you'll see from the background, we're staying in quite quirky, bohemian wood cabin. I'll show you some footage of where we're staying in this video. It's been really lovely just to come somewhere very, very different and just relax. We're literally in the middle of nowhere. It's just been so lovely just to come and sit and relax and just enjoy the nature. So today is our last day on our holiday. I am nearly finished, not quite, nearly finished the Leviathan. I'm hoping to get it finished today. I've really enjoyed this book so far. I found it really quite engaging to get into, and I've really enjoyed just sitting reading one book at a time. Sometimes I have a tendency to read multiple books, and I think some books lend themselves to being picked up in between other reads, but it's been quite nice to get engrossed in just reading this book from start to finish without really reading anything else. I've really enjoyed reading a book set in the landscape in which I'm staying, so I don't know if that's something that other people have ever done when you've gone away somewhere and then you've picked up a book to read set in that setting, but it's been really enjoyable to sit in a very similar landscape to which this book is set, even though it's historical fiction and it's based in 1643, but I could really still imagine life at that time in this particular landscape. And the other book that I have been listening to, which is On the Marsh, I'm only about halfway through that book. I have really enjoyed listening to it. I would say it's probably a book that would most appeal to people who are real bird lovers, know quite a lot about nature. Some of it's kind of gone over my head, if I'm honest. I haven't finished it, and the reason I haven't finished it is just because we're in such a beautiful setting that's so lovely and peaceful and quiet. We can literally hear the sea if we sit outside, and we can hear the birds. We're surrounded by bird life, so I haven't really wanted to listen to an audiobook while we've been here, but it has been nice to hear about, again, the marsh landscape here in Norfolk, because as I've said, we're very, very close to the marshes, and we've driven through quite a bit of marshland. And I will show you some footage of some of the clay marshes which we stopped at as well as part of our drive along the coast here in Norfolk. I am now back at home in North Yorkshire. In a previous little clip you would have seen me saying that I didn't know if I was going to finish the book before I left Norfolk. I did manage to finish it on the last evening, so I just wanted to do a quick wrap up. One of the things that I really appreciated about the final part of this book, so part 3 and the final 2 chapters, is that the characters all move to a different setting. They are in an area called Hapsborough, which was literally 10 minutes up the road from where we were staying in Norfolk. So that last evening, as I was laid in bed reading the final parts of the book, it felt it was literally happening, you know, a few miles away from where I was staying, and the setting could not have felt more familiar. I'm just going to show you a photograph of the sand track road that was straight outside of where we were staying that we had to travel on to get onto a main road. And then I'm going to share with you a little bit of the text from the book. As we moved down a long, thin track, the high hedges on either side, the mud took on a sandy texture. It was so strange to actually read that setting and the characters being there. It really did enhance the reading experience. And in the previous video, I also said that at that point of the reading, I hadn't quite worked out whether the title of the book, the Leviathan, sort of fitted into the story. And I have to be honest and say, even at the end of it, I still wasn't 100% clear and didn't really understand the Leviathan part of it. The author was part inspired to write this book by Thomas Hobson's book Leviathan, which explores sovereignty and who should rule us and how much order do we need as a kind of collective of people. Now, I've not read this book, so I still couldn't quite get really where that fits with the book because I've not read that book. But I am aware that the Leviathan is a biblical sea serpent type creature, and I think if my understanding is correct, is that the Leviathan is an agent of chaos. Those aspects of the book sort of appear towards the end of the book. I have to be honest and say that I still, even having finished it and listening to some author interviews, the Leviathan aspect of the book I still don't think I fully really understand or appreciate, but there were some themes in this book that I did find really interesting. So it does explore the time in history where there was sort of suspicions about witchcraft and the supernatural. It explores the nature of good and evil and religion, and it also looks at gender and family roles and obligations. Overall, I did find this book really enjoyable to read. It was really engaging, it really captured my interest. I did want to keep finding out what was going to happen, and I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed reading this book in a very similar setting from which it was set, and that really did enhance my reading experience. The book was really full of atmosphere and historical detail, and it really did keep my interest throughout, despite there being some parts of the book that weren't fully realised for me. I'd be really interested to know in the comments if anybody else has actually read The Leviathan and how you found it. I hope you've enjoyed this little vlog of my holiday to the Norfolk coast. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye.